the first thing is obviously me and you were at uni together, and we were both studying creative writing. What have you been doing sort of since graduating from uni in terms of your writing?
The main thing is writing a novel. Um, I was writing the novel for 2 years after that. The novel I started in the novel writing course, funnily enough. Well,
Oh,
for
right.
the novel writing course. I wrote that. I wrote the opening to my novel 6 months before the course started,
Yeah.
just so I had something to work with. I didn't really have to do much with it. So that was 40 points or whatever it was in the bag.
Yeah,
Um,
that's,
but yeah, this short story collection is the stuff I wrote in the year beforehand and the year and a half after the novel, basically.
fair enough. And so when you were writing the novel and also the short stories, I mean, were you kind of applying what we learned during our lectures?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Sort of.
I mean, like the dog. Like it's probably. I think it's definitely the longest story on there. It's got like 5 sections. But like that was for Louise Twomey's short stories level 2 course or something. That's
Oh,
the
right,
piece
yeah.
I wrote for that. And obviously I've changed it a little bit since then. But yeah. Yeah, definitely. Judith was a massive help. She was like, I sent her my novel when I finished it, and she was really complimentary.
So did they offer
She
any
even asked me
feedback?
to speak at the uni.
Oh, did she? What did you
Yeah,
say?
yeah, yeah. It was like, well, I didn't say anything because it was 2 days' notice, and I was working. It was on a Wednesday, but but yeah, no, she asked me to speak at the uni, which was fucking awesome. But just because I sent her this novel, yeah.
So, and in terms of with Bad Dreams, you mentioned it's kind of quite a dark selection of stories. I mean, do you think that writing darker stories allows you kind of more freedom to express yourself?
I think tragedy is the greatest form of art, man. I really do. It's so powerful. Yeah, and when you get into those parts, I mean, you're like Alice in fucking Chains. You know,
Yeah.
It's that darkness that really grips you sometimes. That's what I like to write about. You know, it's violence, depression, and that heavy psychological stuff. It's, you know, you can get a character who can. Well, Bad Dreams itself, the story, that's the darkest thing I've ever written.
Yeah.
It is horrifically dark, and yeah, I was in a lot of pain at the time I wrote that. I broke up with Steph, obviously, like a few months beforehand. And the dates of the diary entries in that are the dates I wrote the pieces.
Oh, that's interesting. Then. So it's almost like sort of art imitating kind of real life there then as well.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. Basically, I wrote that because I was feeling really down. I was down a lot. I was feeling really down one morning, and I thought, right, it's sort of like being able to hold up a mirror and see how bad you could be.
Yeah.
So by looking back at it, you realise, okay, no, actually, you know, you're right. It was exhilarating to write, to really like lose yourself.
And so, in many ways, do you think it's kind of almost cathartic to kind of get it out of your system and to have something that you can then look back at the end to sort of remind you where you came from?
Bad Dreams is definitely cathartic, yeah. The violence as well in The Dog, for example, like that, writing violence is incredibly cathartic. I've always found that.
Well, you're not a particularly violent person as well, I suppose.
Well, no, exactly. But like, I mean, the violence is, you know, the expulsion of energy, I guess. You know?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I know one thing you mentioned was that you weren't sure how your colleagues were going to react to your stories, and especially because they're so kind of so personal to you. Have you had any feedback from them yet?
Not yet. No. She's but she was surprised. Yeah, because I mentioned there's you know, there's a story about 2 guys trying to score heroin in the street after a gig.
Yeah.
You know, there's some nasty stories in there. There's a subject matter that I wouldn't particularly want to take to work.
Yeah, you wouldn't sit there
necessarily. But no, it's great. They're so, you know, they've been so supportive. A couple of them want to read it, and the thing is, the people who want to read it are really nice fucking girls as well. Like really, like you know, I'm not sure whether they'll enjoy it or not. It might just be a bit too strong. I know my mum can't read it.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that's kind of interests me is that I would say you're quite an alternative person, and obviously, you listen to Alice in Chains, and I remember watching Bill Hicks all the time at your flat and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it almost seems as though, do you think that there's a kind of a parallel between how you get kind of fans of alternative music and then kind of the trendies, and there's that kind of divide? And do you think there's kind of a parallel within literature as well?
I think it's important that the author comes across in the work. I think that's the best way I can of.
Well, it's write what you know, isn't it? I suppose so.
Exactly, and even like those characters, they aren't me, but it's people you tangentially been involved with. Certain things that you've briefly thought that you think, what if someone was obsessed by that?
Yeah, and take it further.
Yeah, exactly. It's magnifying things because characters aren't real people. They're characters. They're the extreme version is like a cartoon character.
Yeah, no,
like, characters aren't as complicated as real people. But what you can do with that is really push them so that what they are is so strong.
Take them to that next level, yeah. Cool. So,
yeah.
And in terms of Bad Dreams, that's out only on ebook at the moment. I know you've been kind of hatching plans to hopefully get a physical copy out as well. But what's next for you after that?
Getting the novel sorted for the summer. It's all written. There's a couple of things. I'm literally editing it back to front at the moment.
Yeah.
I do it one page by page, back to front, and there's things I'm picking up now because this is at the fourth draft stage and like that. So there's things I'm picking up now where I'm going backwards and forwards and everything else. I'm only about a third of the way through it back to front, but it's only taken a few weeks. So yeah, it's just getting that absolutely ready. And yeah, I mean that novel's the thing I'm most proud of ever doing.
And what's that called?
It's called A Little Death.
Okay, so a nice happy one again.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's about a father who loses his daughter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's murdered. There's no female protagonist in Bad Dreams. There's in not one of the stories is there a female protagonist. That's not because I've shied away from it, but it's just that the ones I have written just haven't sounded convincing enough to me. The only one I'm really proud of actually is in my novel. There's a strong, complicated female character in my novel. And at the end of the novel, there are three scenes. The whole novel is two protagonists. It's Richard and Jake. It's the father who lost his kid and the private investigator. Then that's the whole novel. But then at the end, there are three scenes from the perspective of three different people. Because I'd written the novel all the way up to that point, I knew Christine well enough, the character, to write a scene from her perspective. And it worked. I know it works. It was great to be able to write that because I knew her well enough by then. But that took a whole novel of writing her to be able to comfortably write that scene.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting point. Do you feel like as you kind of write things, do you get to know your characters better along the way, and do they ever kind of act of their own free will almost when you're writing?
I have the best example of this ever. The two protagonists meet. Right, Richard and Jake in my novel. Yeah. And writing the scene, I realised I was stuck. I'd written myself into a dead end. Richard's nervous, Jake's an intimidating man. And obviously Richard's also shaken up. The body of his daughter has just been found. It's a very early scene. And so he goes to make coffee for this private investigator who's just got round to look into it. And he realises he's not even sure he wants to ask him. He knows why she was murdered. He knows, he knows the kind of reason why she was murdered, the predictable reason. Blah, blah, blah. And he's not sure what he wants from him. And then, as I was writing that scene, while Richard was thinking about what he wants and realised he didn't know, I realised he didn't know. And then suddenly, while he was making the coffee, in my mind, he poured the kettle of boiling water over his hand.
Oh, right. And
that completely broke up the scene. It was brilliant. I just couldn't stop writing for an hour. He rushes to the sink, Jake wanders in, they have a moment of sympathy, they bond a little bit. You know, that awkward, that whole tension of the scene just disappeared. And then I realised, and by definition Richard realised, what he wanted.
I mean, that's handy as well that it came kind of so early in the writing of the novel as well, and kind of gives you that confidence that those characters are believable. In fact, they're so believable that you're starting to believe in them yourself.
It's the characters are the muse, man. When you get to know them as well as I did, the characters become the muse. They do things that just work. It's like an actor, you know, improvising, like Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, just improvising. Do you think I'm funny?
Yeah.
They just do that.
Yeah, that's. Would you say the characters are kind of almost more important than the plot in some ways?
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially Bad Dreams. You know, those short stories, they're all about characters. None of them are about a plot. They're all about the characters. There's even one in second person there, and that's just a direct experience of. It's hard writing in second person.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an experience for the reader. That I wasn't even sure if it was fiction, but it sort of counts.
That's interesting, cool. And just a couple of questions now, because we're kind of coming towards the end of time. So just a couple of fun questions to round it off. First off, if you could go out for drinks with any author, living or dead, who would it be and why?
That's a hard question.
There are a lot to choose from.
Thank you, man. I bet Edgar Allan Poe would have been the last. But yeah, he was supposed to be a bit of a joker.
Yeah, true.
And obviously the culture shock as well, talking to a 19th century American, would have been, you know, it would have been interesting.
Or to bring him here for that point as well. That'd be just as interesting.
Yeah.
Putney.
Yeah.
The other question I was just going to end on is, what was the last book that you read, and what did you think of it?
The last book I read was a novel by a guy called Leo Craven, who's my most consistent, you know, my most consistent liker, I guess, on my blog. He's a really cool guy, and yeah, his novel's out in paperback. He got that sorted. Anyway, yeah, I bought it and got the novel and read it, and yeah, it's not a short book, but it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It's called Hallow's End.
Awesome. I think I'll check that out myself and maybe see if he wants an interview as well. So
yeah.
And one question then. So do you feel that it's important for kind of unknown writers and first time writers to read each other's work like that and to kind of give each other shout outs?
Well, I'm useless at it myself. I find it very hard to find the time to write.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, when I write a short story, generally it's a free afternoon I've got. I write it, I edit it in the morning, and then I put it away. It was only going back through it to put this short story collection together that I made any significant changes after, like, that 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, some of them took longer, obviously. The Dog I wrote over the course of a couple of months. Bad Dreams, obviously, was split out into the days I actually wrote it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's great. So the blogging community is an interesting one, but it's kind of something genuinely likes your stuff. It really is. It's when they're very good at it themselves. That's really complimentary.